All right, Charlie Vann here with Sandy King. Sandy, well, I want to thank you very much for taking your time with me here today. And how was your Halloween weekend?
It was different. But in an interesting way. It reminded me a little more of my childhood, where people had to go, okay, so we can't go trick or treating. Let's build mazes in the backyard and talk to each other over back fences, and our kids are bobbing for apples, and they were really like having to, I don't know, look at old Leave It to Beaver things or something to figure out what people used to do for Halloween.
I, I think the mazes in the backyard, though, that would actually be pretty fun. I've seen some pretty elaborate setups and, kind of social distancing, during this time, which I think it's one thing I've learned about this year is just about adapting and just how you can kind of adjust. I mean, what are some ways right now, especially coming from, a producer, writer, editor, just how you've had to adapt with your work?
Well, all right, the big difference where things have had to go on hold is actual production.
Mm-hmm.
There's so far not extremely safe ways to do the kinds of movies we do, heavy contact, lots of people all in one spot, unless you're able to find a production facility, create an NBA style bubble, and just say, okay, everybody, you're coming in, you're waiting 2 weeks. You're not going to see your friends and family, and that's the way it goes. And that includes catering and everybody else. That's viable. But in our productions, that has not yet happened, and that's not yet widespread enough a protocol for everybody to get their groove on. I think that's going to be the future, where everybody just goes, essentially, it's like, okay, we're going on location, see you in a couple months or a few weeks or whatever it takes. But for right now, the other parts of creating are still going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that finding the silver lining is that scripts are more ready.
Mm-hmm.
Whole seasons scripts are ready instead of just outlines and pilots and pitches. So that when networks are picking things up, they're picking up the whole shows. When features are picked up, they're ready to go. So that part's been really interesting. Our shows that we have, because we've got two series placed at networks. We've got features that are out for consideration. We actually have one feature that's also placed. Those things keep moving forward. We do a lot of our work remotely with writers and that stuff anyway. That goes on. I put COVID precautions in place at the office, where our guys are working remotely for the most part, but we brought in the giant sanitation crew that went through, and quite frankly, the office probably needed that kind of deep cleaning anyway, but did that, put in filtration systems with UV lighting in them and that kind of stuff, because maybe we all got a little slack in the days since polio and tuberculosis and those things. All the stuff we started to think my parents' generation was too hyper about. Well, welcome back. So, I think that it's not like new normal. It's like, pull your act together again.
Yeah.
And I think in the long run, we're going to just get people that aren't just being anti-authoritarian for the hell of it. You're going to have to grow up from being 6-year-olds and just take responsibility for ourselves and everyone else.
Well, it is going to be interesting with the real young generation right now growing up, because I feel like there's different time periods. You know, there was, you know, pre 9/11, then the kids during 9/11, growing up right after that, and now there's going to be, you know, the COVID era.
Yeah.
But what I can't say is all through that is just even from 9/11, you know, we adapted, we adjusted. You know, it was a tough time, but we got through it. Even you were talking about parents' generation, you know, you have even through World War II, you know, that was, people forget how daunting that was, and it put a lot of things on pause. I mean, here in Texas, you know, we have the big state fair, and that it's been since World War II since it was canceled, you know. So there are things that have been put on pause, but we got through it. We banded together. And one thing I just want to point out, going towards, you know, even towards your comics, is how you have groups and friends banding together. Everybody kind of grouping together, like we're in this. Do you feel like even with your writing and your storytelling, you take a lot from what you have experienced, some of the experiences?
Here's the thing. I think that since the 80s, in terms of writers reflect society, arts reflect society. And for the last 40 years, we've been pretty self-centered and mean-spirited. And I think no one's going to say killing 250,000 people is a good thing. But what's it going to take to have a wake-up call that, in fact, we are a vulnerable species that and a vulnerable planet that all need each other? And I think that did it really take this? Did it really take our current political situation, all those kinds of things, to reflect on how interdependent we are, and that perhaps a little unity never hurt anyone, perhaps a little cognizance of our impact on each other. You know, there were, going back to my parents' generation, the World War II generation, nobody stopped to say, well, why are you asking me? You know, people were used to pulling together. You know, through a lot of other crises, you know, when you had the TB epidemic, when you had polio, nobody said, you know, no, I'm not going to take that. I'm not going to do that. They saw their children in iron lungs and did things. They saw families decimated by TB, and they went into isolation. We got very selfish during these last 40 years and didn't want to be told what to do or how to do it. And everything became about ourselves. And I used to sit there and say, if there was a God, why didn't he step in at some point? You know, some of my stories are about, you know, the justice in the world, and they're allegorical tales for that sort of self-awareness. Is this really what it takes? And there's still people who kind of don't get it. So I'm kind of wondering if we're going to come out of this with a little more self-awareness and a little less meanness and a little less selfishness. I would hope something decent comes of this beyond having killed our families, and it's looking like no Thanksgivings and no Christmases. You know, can we possibly pull our acts together to find a way forward?
Well, here's to really hoping. I mean, I think also I try to look at it too as optimism as well. I feel like we can. I feel like we have the ability to. It's just putting forth that effort to in doing so. You know, there's always that saying, art imitates life, or art imitates reality. You know, is today kind of more where we're seeing more coming from your stories like Graveyard Moon, like Cooper's, that in the end, they just want what they want. You know, they may lose all their friends, their team, but at the end, it's their end goal, you know, for him getting that treasure. but also there's a little, there's consequences is that as well. I mean, do you kind of feel that's where we are as well? That you can kind of take in your stories. You know what? I'm seeing this character here. I'm seeing this character here.
Well, yeah, there's definitely a worldview reflected in a lot of stuff that I choose to kind of go, do I have to hit you with a sledgehammer? You're going to die. The monster's going to get you because you're kind of a jerk. I think the underlying theme to most of our stuff is, who are you?
Mm-hmm.
Who are you when you have to look in the mirror? Do you look in the mirror? Do you ever try to evaluate who you are? And, where are our heroes? I mean, and look at the change in the movies, from the war years through now. Who are the heroes? Are they the wisecracking, opportunists, or are they the self-sacrificers? And then where is the in horror, where is the bad guy?
Mm-hmm.
Is it the other, or is it within us? I tend to feel that it's within us. It's not the other. But we've tried to make it the other for a long time, and that's coming home to roost. Quit pointing at the other. Start looking inside.
And I also feel like, looking inside, but also come together in the middle as well. One thing I've noticed with a lot of film lately and television, there's a lot of the anti-hero that becomes the hero, sometimes accidentally. Sure. Once again, I take from Even They Live with Nada. He's not your conventional hero. He's not really trying to be, but he stumbles in by accident and becomes, and he's also this misfit as well. And which I see that in a lot of the stories that you tell, is these misfits that get a chance to kind of rise, to the occasion. So,
they're
maybe
reluctant. They don't want to be. They don't want to be the hero. They don't want to be the savior, but they do the right thing. Again, that becomes what's inside you. They don't start out wanting to be Captain America, but they're going to do the right thing. They're going to, there's only so far you go when you sit there and you turn around and you go, what the hell's going on here? So, that's where you get your John Nadas. And then that's also, in terms of John's movies, that's very much, his point of view. That's very much his wheelhouse. And again, that's about, who are you? What makes you human?
Well, and I do love, though, like going even to Stanley's Ghost, which I really, really enjoy.
Isn't that great? Yeah.
I love, well, one thing,
did a great job with that.
I love it because I feel like, in a lot of stories, you can find characters that relate to you. And for that, I've had the group of friends that have the different personalities. I was Chester. I was the prankster that sometimes people thought always was pranking.
Yeah.
And then you have your Billy. Did you have that growing up, even at Westlake or UCLA, a group of friends where you can like, okay, here's Chester, here's Billy, here's Baby Fang, the fierce one of the group, does not hold back.
Yeah, Baby Fang's awesome. Next year's Halloween book for the little kids is going to feature Baby Fang, who decides he's a werewolf.
Oh, nice.
And, yeah. Baby Fang just, rocks. And Jeff Balke created this set of characters that's so great. And Paul Story, brought the actual story to life. But again, these are tales where I think you can tell these horror tales with training wheels, so to speak, to kids in an appropriate way, where you're not trying to terrify children, but you're trying to deal with their fears of a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old. And as you say, bring in characters that they might relate to, and still have little ghosts and things like that, but you're telling another tale within the tale. And that's the point of doing Stanley's Ghost.
Have you ever had any one of those kind of, maybe you thought it was like a scary experience that maybe it was a lot less than what it was, but like ever like stumble upon, like, you know, they stumble upon Balana, you know, they're like, oh, vampire, and she's just a bat, but you know, your senses are so heightened. Have you ever had that just growing up and, you know, stumble upon something that wasn't, you know, what it seemed?
You know, yeah, I grew up in remote places. And so I always kind of hoped there were ghosts and things, but I wanted to have had the experience and already lived through it. I didn't want to be so, I didn't want to like be coming up on the experience. I wanted to have been able to say, I saw the ghost.
Yeah.
So that I knew that I was all right.
I do like when they're like, where are you from? The South, Florida? Like, I thought that was fun. Although I don't know, Florida right now is a little different, but
yeah, it's a little terrifying. It used to just be about the alligators.
yeah.
Now it's about the highways.
That's kind of how Texas is too right now. There's highways on top. It's not like highwayception right now, especially if you come to Dallas where I'm at. It's just like, it just never ends. There's highways and highways, and traffic is crazy.
Well, yeah, you know, it's like, you know, I refuse to be intimidated, and I have my Biden Harris stickers, and I have my my monster, my Bob the Gargoyle sticker on the back of my car. And I thought, you know, no guts, no glory. But, you know, nowadays you wait for somebody to nail you for it. And it's just like, okay, I lived through the demonstrations. I'll live through them again. But yeah, I'm pretty glad I'm not in the South.
Well, it is interesting that there's like just such a huge like divide, just two sides. I felt like, I don't know, I was talking to a friend the other day where, you know, in the 90s and even around like 9/11, like it didn't feel like that as much. There was agree to disagree, but it was nowhere near the tension where we're at, especially right now within this year, where there's just
as
like,
long as
pick
you
a
weren't a
side.
Muslim, you were fine. But if you were a Muslim, you know, they were all out to kill you then. I mean, there's always been somebody they could pick on, which I find unfortunate. You know, there were rough times if you were Japanese, German, black. You know, you've always been in the barrel. Um, you know, Hispanics. You know, I guess they always felt they needed you for work, but you know, we've just got to get over that crap. It's not about the other; it's about ourselves. And I feel like we're finally on the precipice of getting it.
Mm-hmm.
There's enough young people that those of us that came up through thinking we were solving civil rights,
Mm-hmm.
raised to have more open attitudes, that you guys are going to put it over the top, and the next generation are going to put it over the top by finally getting that we're all the problem. It's not just, oh, we'll solve this for the day, and you can there's no longer separate bathrooms, water fountains, and entrances. No, it's got to be bigger. It's got to be more benign. And you can't just turn around after 9/11 and hate all Muslims. And you can't just turn around and go, yeah, it's okay for black people to live on the block, but you can't marry my daughter. And, you know, all of those things, it's all part of the same problem, ongoing. And the American experiment is so close to getting it right. If we don't all go back to the dinosaurs. We lifted that rock, they've crawled out from under it, we know they're there, but we're better than this. We can do this.
I really do believe we can. I do believe that, you know, we can once again meet in that middle, just meaning finding some peace, finding some camaraderie and unity. And I feel like one thing that's always universal is art, is entertainment, where we do get to see it. And some may be obviously fantasy, but it doesn't have to be. I feel that there's always lessons to be learned, even in fictional stories. When you're writing, what are some of the things that inspire you, motivate you when you're sitting down there? You sometimes just wake up, you're like, I got an idea.
It's usually reality. It's usually something that's
Mm-hmm.
been bugging me about how people think, about how they're. I'm much more inspired by things. I mean, like I wrote, Asylum actually came from an idea that Thomas Ian Griffith originally had, and came into to John and I, and we were all working up together. But the ongoing comic started growing more out of, and the characters' debates and dialogues came out of my thoughts about faith and religion and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. The story I wrote for this year's Halloween Nights anthology came about because of the people my age have all been dealing with the passings of our parents.
Mm-hmm.
And then, other people of all ages, and you start thinking about mortality, and you start hearing the platitudes of people sitting around going, oh, they're going to a better place.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, look how peaceful they look. Are they? Are these things we tell ourselves to feel better? So it's the more existential things of life as you get older. When you're little, you have the Stanley's ghost fears.
Mm-hmm.
As you, at different stages of life, you fear different things. So mostly my stories come out of things I'm thinking about or things I'm watching in people and human behavior. And then I turn that to my monsters.
Well, I think you made a great point. Your fears change, adapt over time.
Sure.
Some of the fears even right now is like financial. Just thinking like, can I afford a house right now? Can I am I making enough to get by? Should I get married? Just those seem like small fears, but they're what set and create that anxiety where we are now. But the older you get, it changes. It kind of reminds me of, going through your short film, animated film, Antimatter. We see the lead change through different clothes and generation. I even see that too with your artwork as well through the comics. We mentioned Stanley's Ghost, but even from A Witch's Storm to A Lighthouse Closet, you see the different artwork in that. Does that kind of all correlate as well? Just how in life there's so many changes and adaptation.
Well, the big thing with the artwork is, first of all, sometimes the writer has who they want to interpret their story, because it's
Mm-hmm.
a 50. The great thing about comics is it's 50-50 storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And so you want that symbiosis and that partnership that sparks each other. Other times when a writer comes in who's not from comics, doesn't have somebody they want, or the regular artist isn't available, I enjoy teaming up people that I think are going to, vibe well together. And so that's really just a matter of who's getting the point across the best. And then in terms of putting the anthologies together, it's the box of chocolates rule of how do I give the reader the best night of sitting around reading all kinds of different horror.
Well, I also feel like the setting, the backdrop is a character in itself. And I've even noticed that through your films as well. I mean, even in They Live, Vampires. And of course, Ghost of Mars is the whole character right there.
Oh, yeah.
Where does some of those kind of inspiration? Because like whenever I go to New Mexico, which I know that's where Ghost of Mars was filmed, the Gypsum Mines, I feel like it's a big painting. Like I just feel like you go into New Mexico, even Arizona, it's like, man, it just comes alive to you like a 3D painting. When you're looking at kind of the artwork, you're like, okay, are you creating the artwork first? Are you creating the character first as far as the description? Like what comes first to your mind?
The story.
The story.
The story. What's the story within the story? Why are you telling this story? And that's the biggest thing I ask each of the creators is, why are you telling this story? What's behind it? because that's what makes a story come alive. If you're only doing it for the one scene, or if a filmmaker's only doing it for the one beheading or for the one thing, that's not a story that's going to stick with you. That's just a scene. That's just an image. So to me, what makes something come alive is what's your point? What are you trying to tell me? So it's the story underneath.
Now, have you started like with the story? And you're like, you know what? I want to change that direction. I'm going to adapt this. Has there been a couple times where that's happened where you've adjusted the story? We're like, you know what? No, I think it'd be better this way.
There's whole stories I've thrown out and given up on. I mean, there's you just think you have the best idea in the world, and then you realize you suck, and no. Yeah. No. You tear things up, you can't be precious or it's not going to work. You sit there and there's, particularly in things like the anthology story, those are 13 pages of trying to create suspense and scare somebody and wrap it up. That's brutal. And you'll be writing along, you'll think you're just so great at 10 o'clock at night, you rock. At 8 o'clock the next morning, you look at it and you don't. And you have to start all over and figure out whether can the patient be saved or not.
Where do you make that realization? Like, I'm not feeling this. Like last night, like you said, you were rocking and rolling, and then the next day you look at it, and you're like, I don't know about that.
You just look at it, and you know when it goes nowhere. You're just in denial. It's like you were on a roll, and you thought you had it, and then you go back and you realize your page turns don't work. There's no suspense, and you wonder why you thought it did, because you somehow were on a different ride than really existed. And it just like, you go, okay, so start over. Big deal. Just start over. You can't be precious.
What is some of the biggest advice that you took away from UCLA when you were studying there for the particular arts that has traveled with you throughout your career?
That's really one of the places that I got the you can't be precious from. I had, I was a pictorial arts major. I was a painter, and I had a great teacher, Jan Stussy. The Stussy T-shirts and stuff that you see, the signature. All right, it was that guy's father was my main teacher, and great artist. And you would be, whether you were taking life drawing from him or whatever you were doing, you'd be working your heart out, and he'd have you do a life drawing, and you'd be busting your ass for a couple of weeks. And he'd come by and he'd go, okay, now tear it up. You go, what? And he'd have you tear it up, take the pieces, paste them onto another board, and draw into that. And it was like a constant tearing down and rebuilding and tearing down and rebuilding. And it was a really great way of not getting precious about your stuff, not getting precious about what you created, so that you dared to go further and dared to go further. And then John taught me more of the same, with his ability to not be precious about his original visions and looking at a cut and saying it doesn't work and tear back into it. And I found that most great artists aren't precious. They're willing to look at their own work critically or throw out their expectation in order to make it better. And so I'd say that journey started at UCLA and has continued through my artistic life.
You've also felt like it's that challenge of it, like just being too complacent, like, oh, okay, I got it right here, when it once again, like just growing from that and realize, no, you can keep pushing.
Yeah, there's a point at which you have to say, okay, it's done. But there's times at which you're looking at what you expect to see. Mm-hmm. and you're just getting precious about it when maybe there's something more there. Maybe you need to be a little harder on yourself.
Well, it kind of goes back to our conversation a minute ago about like even with society, I think, you know, just that complacency of like, no, we can do better. We can keep pushing
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's always room to look at yourself and go, have I done my best? Whether it's in the art, whether it's in your interaction with society, whether it's in your relationships, whatever it is, you know, I think a little self-examination never hurt.
Well, going back to like productions right now during this time, have you had to change possible locations? I know some aren't filming right now, but possible locations with everything going on.
We're not really at that stage on anything.
Yeah.
The way it worked out, we were really in a bunch of we were in the middle of setting things up, in the middle of having things at studios getting ready to go to networks, in the middle of we're doing an interactive feature, and that takes an eternity to write and set up because of all of its branches and stuff. So fortunately, we didn't have to shut anything down or do anything differently. There's one real interesting project that was having plates shot in Louisiana, and the hurricanes wiped that out for a while, but that's just on pause. But it was set in the bayous and stuff, and they were getting flooded. So, I prefer not to get anyone killed.
That would not be good.
Yeah, it's bad form. But no, just where we were at with each of those things was really more in the writing stages and stuff. So we weren't stuck, like, say, Creepshow, having to send everybody home for a while, or, any of those things where you just kind of close up shop and wait. But again, patience is a virtue.
Well, that is very true. And I think I'm trying to learn that still to this day. I think everybody, I think it's a good lesson to learn, just be patient and especially like, I feel with art and entertainment, and you mentioned that even once again, like how, just not getting complacent, keep going, having that, just that patience to like move forward and let things come to you as well. Where was that moment when you realize this is what I want to do, no matter how long it takes me to get there, but this is the path I want to be on?
I'm not one of those that plans the future. I just keep opening doors. Doors open, I walk through them. I really wasn't, okay, you have to have a vision of the future. You got to plan this. I just kind of went, with somebody go, well, how would you feel about doing our kind of, I just say, okay, a lot. Just keep saying yes, and just keep doing your adventure. I wanted to be a painter, and then I found out you could starve. So I went into animation, and then I went into live action, and then I went where life took me. And I think there's a lot to be said for all the experience you gain by just saying, okay, that's interesting. Okay, that's interesting. If you just find life interesting and keep following it, what you amass winds up serving you for your next door that opens. And that's what I did. I wasn't the big ambitious planner that decided I was going to be, I'm going to be a big film producer. Oh, I'm going to be the first woman comic book publisher. Oh, I'm going to be blah, blah, blah. No, I had no master plan. I just kept living and creating. It worked really well for me.
Well, it's kind of like the old improv saying, yes, and
Yeah.
technique, just go with the flow. Just let life take you. And by the way, congrats again about Strom King Comics. I know it's been about 7 years now. I know before you said you haven't really had a comic book experience. So what have you learned in those 7 years? And what is your advice for anybody that wants to go down in this endeavor, start a publishing company?
Well, your alternative is the old joke about owning a boat, which is to, stand in the shower and tear up dollar bills. It's not a big money making venture,
Mm.
but it's really a cool. It's a, it's like movie making in that it's a great group endeavor. Um, it's got great more immediate feedback than filmmaking because it's faster.
Mhm.
Um, for me, it's really artistically freeing because you're not jeopardizing anybody but yourself.
Mm.
Tell stories. If you don't like it, I'm sorry you wasted $4. Um, but for me, it's been a lot of fun. It's a great way of, I can tell a gigantic story for the same amount of money I can tell a small story. Um, so I find that all really artistically fulfilling. It is not an inexpensive endeavor. So I would suggest that you have a job to support your job. Uh, it's, it, I originally thought we were just going to do Asylum, and that would be an interesting thing. And everybody that wanted John to do a comic book, here, okay, we did a comic book, but it turned out to be so much fun and so interesting that it grew and became a company and an ongoing endeavor. And I can't see giving it up because I'm kind of a comic junkie. Uh, but I'd say if it's what you really want to do, cool. Know that between paying artists and printing and shipping, it's got some costs involved. And know that you are subject to things like when COVID hits,
Mm.
the distributors quit distributing, quit paying publishers, and comic shops go under. So there's a lot of variables that will impact you, and you're not going to sit back and be the next Marvel in DC because they've got mega corporations behind them. But it's a cool thing to do. It's just a
It's
little
a very,
dice.
I like that the medium is still going strong. I mean, it feels like
Yeah.
it's one of the oldest medium, obviously going all the way back to comic strips and newspapers, but it's still going strong. It's still popular. People are still purchasing, comics and even graphic novels. You mentioned even like with Comic Cons, what do you think about the future right now? I know it's hard to really say, but we'll see how this next year goes.
Yeah.
But do you think it's just for a while we're looking at more virtual and
I haven't got a clue. I'd be lying if I said I knew what was going to happen. I think we've got to find, like all the arts, and in fact all business, we have to get creative about. There's so much noise out in the world getting people's attention. We have to figure out what's the new marketing.
Mhm.
How do we talk to people? How do we reach people in a non-bombastic way that's engaging and says that we have something of worth? What is our new form of conventions that maybe combines live and virtual? How do we learn from this and amplify the convention experience when conventions come back,
Mhm.
and do something cool that makes it so you're not just in Hall H's lines for 2 days? And what's the hybrid outcome at the end of the day? Because I think that's what'll eventually happen, that we'll get a little of both, because I think people are having some fun
Mhm.
with the San Diego did some cool virtual panels and really handled their stuff well. I thought that New York with their metaverse didn't handle it as well. San Diego surprised me. they really got that together this year and did some effective stuff. So I'm curious to see how we smooth that out and make it so that everybody gets something workable that isn't cataclysmic when it goes down and all removed, and you don't get that vibe that you get when you invade San Diego. Something will come out of it. I just don't know what.
Well,
I don't think we're going to be in big groups for a while.
No, I don't think so. Maybe. I know more people are starting to purchase like VR. So if there's a simulation way that connects you into their live, but it's like you're there, but you're not, you know, I don't know if that's a possibility. But I know with like social media, just even Instagram and Facebook Live, I mean, those streams, and we're seeing it with musicians too, because obviously the concert experience is on hold. It's still interactive, and so many people are glued to, especially even Instagram right now. That I feel like that could be like at least a right now, but I think it's just finding that middle ground once again, finding that middle to satisfy what people used to know.
Yeah, I'm finding that the bigger interactive group events rather than Instagram, you know, there's little bits of stuff, and I realize everybody's around there, but that seems to be the kind of donut hole as opposed to pie of experiences. But I find some of the bigger panels or bigger experiences with the chat going at the same time is a little more immersive and a little more connected. I think if they can find more of that, some of the panels I've been on that way, that you kind of can get more vibe going. It's out there. We're close, but I think we've just started doing it.
Yeah. Well, it's like even this platform, Zoom, you know, Zoom is interesting. I think it's good for like one-on-one or a couple people. I don't know how it will look with a bunch of people, because you have people waiting in the lobby and that. So I don't know if you could get necessary. You can maybe do one-on-ones that way. If there's some way you can set up like one-on-ones, have meet and greet, but I think it's definitely good for this. I'm not sure for a Comic-Con per se.
No, I think that's when you wind up having to figure out how do you make a more seamless transition from room to room for those panels. How do you make an environment that essentially is a convention hall where you can move through a virtual convention hall and go into where the panels are a little more like the convention experience. And I will bet someone's going to come up with it. And that will be a little more vibrant and a little more fast moving. It could be good. Who the hell knows? I have no clue.
I know some museums do these, especially like with kids that are in hospitals. They'll do like a robot that goes through. So that could be, or you have multiple of them. I know some, like even with museums, you know, doing the virtual experience right now, because obviously, you know, even with outreach programs, it's kind of hard. But I think that could be maybe if they can make it a little, like you said, like quicker and more like wide variety, but that could be a possibility. I'm still waiting to see how much robotics takeover we see in the near future. And that even goes back to, I remember even Antimatter seeing the robot. I was like, you know, even back then in the 70s to now, like there's this obsession with robotics. I mean, what do you think about robotics and automation and even how it may play into your industry as well?
Haven't got a clue. You know, I think that AI is going to wind up being definitely going to wind up being the future. You know, it's both the asset and the threat. So how that plays out again is going to be in the hands of who controls it.
So we could be in the Jetsons. I remember my dad was at a hospital.
Yeah, the positive side would be the Jetsons. You know, I would love to be able to be like Judy Jetson, get up in the morning, go into the closet and come out dressed. Yeah, I think it'd be awesome.
I think that would help anyone that has to hit that morning traffic. Just no, boom, quick, no time at all. I remember my dad was talking about there's a hospital here in Dallas, and he was driving at night, and they have kind of this robot that brings like I guess like documents and that, but it came out of nowhere. It's like this little robotic, and it freaked him out. He's like, what is going on? So we're kind of getting there a little bit with robotics. I believe I could be wrong, but I believe there are some robotics even used with surgeries now and that.
Well, there's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot, and they're pretty interesting now that in general they're controlled. They've got these robotics that are controlled either in the room or even remotely for surgeries in other places. That are fascinating. They're used for some of the finest work. That hands don't go in, but these really fine instruments go in that are essentially robotics. I was talking to a vascular surgeon about that, and that it's amazing, very cool stuff.
Well, I always see, I think it was like a year ago, they had that robot. It looked lifelike, like the outside.
Yeah, that creeps me out.
Yeah, that was like, oh, I don't know about that.
No, I want to know what's real and what isn't.
Yeah.
I put a stamp on it.
I wouldn't mind a C3PO, like a C3PO.
Yeah, that kind of stuff, great, but don't fuck with me about, who's real.
Yeah, no Bicentennial Man where the robot eventually becomes a human.
Yeah.
Human. So
no Blade Runner.
No Blade Runner. Well, Sandy, I want to thank you again for taking your time. I had such a fun time just chatting with you. What's next coming up? I know you had Vortex 2.0 come out this summer, and also Volume 6 of Tales from a Halloween Night. What can fans expect next?
Wow. I'm trying to think of where we stand right now. The big thing is we're really developing Storm Kids. So like you've seen Stanley's Ghost. I don't know if you saw Grimmstown Terror Tales. That one's Neo Edmonds, and we've had the first chapter out as a little standalone that we've been giving out for free to kind of, get everybody prepped for what's coming. That one comes out in February, and there's even Booger Troll plush toys coming for Grub the Booger Troll.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because, and Neil keeps saying to me, how did you come up with calling him a Booger Troll? I said, he pulled keys out of his nose. I mean, of course he's
That's perfect.
Yeah. So he's coming. We've got... we're now up to a lot of books, so I can't remember what's next, honestly. Graveyard Moon just came out. We've got more Nile stuff coming. Basically, we've got another Scow series coming, Hell. So that's coming up in Sci-Fi Tales. There will be more Night Terrors coming. So Night Terrors is building up. Storm Kids is building up.
And could we expect these by next summer or next fall?
Oh yeah, no, they're keeping up. Oh yeah, I mean everything is still grinding through. The books don't stop.
I'm glad to see that. we need them, and especially during this time, I think it's good to have a good escape.
Oh yeah, and I'm back writing. The final arc of Asylum is happening again. Awesome. I got Mike Sizemore now that he's finished Vortex. I've said, come write Asylum with me. I haven't got time to finish it by myself, and I burned out. So Sizemore's coming. We're finishing up Asylum this year.
Well, thank you again, Sandy. You enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.